going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aidan, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a Chicago Bulls related video referring to, I guess, a question that I have to ask for you guys, and whether the answer is either a yes or a no, and I'm going to give my reasons why for my answer personally. Also, feel free to let me know some of the candidates for this position that you would like to see for the Chicago Bulls, and let's just have an honest discussion about this team and where it could be headed in the future. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and where their future is headed, and of course any suggestions in terms of this position and players that could definitely fit a position. We'll get more into that a little bit later in the video. Won't be talking too much about the players, but mainly the position itself and why it's very important that we do or do not go after this position. And the position is, ladies and gentlemen, the backup center position. Should the Chicago Bulls pursue a backup center, getting closer to the buyout market and the trade deadline? We don't have long to go now, ladies and gentlemen, and as more days go by, there'll be more discussions for the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, there's been more discussions if you look at any articles talking about how the Bulls need a lot of defensive help, and my eyes are looking at the backup center at the moment, because it does seem like the Bulls have a dilemma on their hands on what they want to do in that position. For the majority of the season, we ended up playing a little bit of a small ball lineup, ladies and gentlemen. We did start off playing Tony Bradley, but obviously he's not capitalized a lot on his opportunities when he does play. So we moved to a small ball lineup. We moved for Derrick Jones Jr. as our backup center for the longest time. I think many people probably won't really remember that, but Derrick Jones Jr. was our backup center when he was fully healthy and playing for the Chicago Bulls. And to be fair, he did an okay job as the backup center for the Chicago Bulls. He's very athletic, but playing a 6'5" center, I don't think many people want to see that if you're a Chicago Bulls fan. And the reality is, he did play well. I did trust him in that position, but it's not the ideal situation for any Bulls fans to go through. Then we moved into a phase where we played Tyler Cook there, and we still probably will be seeing Tyler Cook play there a little bit more often for the Chicago Bulls, but that's definitely something that is interesting to see as well. He has a little bit of a bigger body. He is more muscular. He probably can defend himself a little bit more in the paint, play a little bit more of a physical style, but still not the kind of guy that I think has done very well for the Chicago Bulls for the majority in the backup center position. He has his glimpses, as anybody does for any team. If you play well one game, you have those glimpses that you can do it, but obviously in the long haul and the grand scheme of things, Tyler Cook has not played well as a backup center for the Chicago Bulls. And then obviously we started to see Tony Bradley a little bit more against the Portland Trail Blazers. He definitely had his 16 minutes to show what he can do, and he played very well in those 16 minutes, but I guess the problem is, do you really trust Tony Bradley to do similar things in the next game, and then the game after that, and the game after that? Not necessarily even dropping the 10 points. It's more of being able to get the easy buckets, go for dunks, grab the ball, stuff like that, that maybe for him is not seen as very good, or it needs a lot of work, let's say. He doesn't catch the ball like a lot of the guys catch the ball for the Chicago Bulls. He often slips out of his hand. He can't grasp the ball properly. When he goes for a dunk, sometimes he might miss the dunk, and those easy opportunities get wasted because we don't have that center as the backup that could probably grab the ball. So you look at those situations for the Chicago Bulls, and you have to ask yourself the question, should the Chicago Bulls pursue a backup center going into the buyout market and the trade deadline for the Chicago Bulls? Is it a necessity to go after a backup center when we know, all things considered, we may need one in the future? Here's what I have to say. First things first, we need to talk about some of the struggles of our starting center, ladies and gentlemen, Nikola Vucevic. Nikola Vucevic in the recent games has been really good for the Chicago Bulls, getting it into the pace, going into the post, and being able to execute with paint production more than ever for the Chicago Bulls. It's been great to see. I've loved his recent few games for the Chicago Bulls. I know many of you guys have loved it as well, but obviously the question is, can he be consistent in that way? I want to see him be this consistent till the trade deadline. Obviously, there'll be great games, there'll be poor games. It happens with everybody. I'm not going to judge Vucevic off of one poor game coming up, and then he continues to go on a good run of form in the next few games. One bad game's not going to do it for me for Vucevic, but so far we've seen a very up and down season, to say the least. So the question does need to be asked if he can be trusted and if he can keep up this level of play. What is he going to do against Philadelphia? He's going to be versing an MVP caliber center in Joel Embiid. He's going to go out to the perimeter. That's my guess. He's going to go out to the mid-range and go out to the three-point line and try to spread the floor against Joel Embiid. That might be the right answer for players like Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, who won't have a center trying to, I guess, protect the paint. But for Vucevic, I want to see that paint production continue. I want to see him go into the post and get some easy post hooks and stuff of that nature. Philly's going to be an interesting test for Nikola Vucevic, because if he does a very similar thing in the paint where he gets his buckets in the paint, he's getting offensive rebounds and easy putbacks, he's going for easy post hooks, he's getting to the line as well. If we see all that with Nikola Vucevic, then our starting center position is pretty much locked and loaded, and it can be trusted. That's obviously going into the All-Star break is when I'll probably make my decision on that. Many of you guys will make your own decisions on that. But for the backup center, we sorely lack a backup center. So my answer is, we probably do need a backup center for the Chicago Bulls. Is it a necessity? I think it is a necessity. The reality is, when you look at the center position, does Billy Donovan trust any of those guys to really come in and be the main center as that backup for the Chicago Bulls? The guy that you can always rely on, or the guy that you can guarantee will give you good minutes every single night when he's on the floor. You look at the bench of the Chicago Bulls team when it's fully healthy, guys that you can almost guarantee will give you good games is Alex Caruso and Ayo as well. I think Ayo is getting to that point off of our bench when everybody's healthy. He could guarantee you some good games and some good minutes. Pretty much everybody else on this team on the bench, there's questions around them. Kobe White, as good as he's been recently, there will always be questions with Kobe White, because if he doesn't shoot well, his form will drop and many people will take notice straight away. There's a lot of Kobe White hate that goes around, and when he has a bad game, people will rip into him. It's just the way that it is. Even if I disagree with it, that's what's going to happen. When he has great games, everybody will be loving what Kobe White does. But when he has one bad game, people will go on about Kobe White. So Alex Caruso and Ayo are the only guys that will pretty much guarantee you good minutes, and people will trust them whether they're starting or coming off the bench. What do we have in terms of the center position that can do that? Even the power forward position, of course, a big issue for the Chicago Bulls. What do we have that can do that for us? What do we have that can guarantee you good minutes coming off of that bench? We don't trust Tyler Cook. Billy Donovan does not trust Tyler Cook. If he trusted Tyler Cook, he would have played him against Portland. He doesn't trust Tony Bradley, because if he trusted Tony Bradley, he would have been the backup center from the very beginning of the season, and he just has not been that. Billy Donovan clearly, and the coaching staff clearly, cannot trust both of those guys. So I find it as a necessity, because we need to find guys that we can trust to bring into this team. There's obviously two ways you could go about that. A, you could get a small ball center that could kind of play as a power forward. I guess the main guy that people are talking about recently is Rashad Holmes for the Sacramento Kings. He's a good player. He's one of the fan favorites. It's going to be very difficult to trade for him, considering how good and how much Sacramento love him. But the reality is, that's what many people are talking about recently. That's an option you can go down. Or if you want a true and true center to come into this team as a backup and backup alone, with Holmes, you can bring him as a power forward and you can play him as a small ball center. And it almost is instantly great for the Chicago Bulls in my eyes, because he plays both of those positions very, very well, and we could trust him in both of those positions if he comes here. If you want to go for an out center, many people are talking about a Dwight Howard type of player, which would be very good for the Chicago Bulls as well. He's not obviously the Dwight Howard in his prime, but he's a great rebounder still. He's a very decent rim protector. He's someone that wants to protect the paint, and I think he's more trusted compared to players like Tony Bradley and all of that stuff. But we have to wait and see, ladies and gentlemen. I personally find that as a necessity, and I think we can go in different directions with a small ball center, or we could go for a true and true big. It doesn't really matter to me. As long as that position is going to be targeted, it's an essential for the Chicago Bulls. But this also means that everybody needs chances, ladies and gentlemen. Tony Bradley had a great game against Portland. What is he going to do now? Is he going to get more minutes against the Orlando Magic? And is he going to show what he can do for this team on a consistent basis? Because if he does that, we don't need a backup center. We could focus on the power forward position. We could focus and roll with the team that we have, and we'll be just fine. But we need to see trusted players getting minutes on this team, and we need to see the right adjustments made for the right teams. These are two things that have been sorely lacking for the Chicago Bulls. If you can't find people you trust, you need to go out and look for those guys that you can trust elsewhere and bring them into this team. Whether it's a G League player, whether it's a starting center, whether it's a backup center, whoever it is, we have players that we need to trust. If as soon as the trust goes away, the team will not perform at its best, and the team will keep on mixing and matching, and the team won't trust each other. They won't trust the center. You think the coaching staff won't trust the center? The players won't trust the center either. It's just the way that it is. If the coaching staff can't trust these guys, how can the players trust these guys? It's as simple as that. You got to keep on trying to give these guys opportunity, and if you don't trust them, go for new players, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I have to say. It's all about trust. It's all about bringing the best you could possibly bring, and we'll just wait and see. A backup center, in my opinion, I haven't mentioned a lot of, I guess, targeted players, because there are so many options for a backup center. We don't need someone that's going to drop 15 points every night as a center. We don't need that type of guy. We need a guy that can grab rebounds and make an impact in the pick and roll and potentially get some couple of points here and there. But mainly we need a defensive center. We need someone where in the fourth quarter, if we need defense and Vucevic is not playing a great defensive game, he can go out and we can bring that guy in. That's what I feel like the Chicago Bulls need to target more than scoring itself, because I think the scoring off the bench will be fine when we get players back. But that's something we need to work on. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. Again, any suggestions you have in the comments below, feel free. Regardless of that, I'll see you in another Chicago Bulls video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care.